And just like that, I think we are good to go. Here we are with yet again another free report Friday for each and every one of you out there tuning in. I am Fusion Phil over here at jitcadcam. We are an Autodesk reseller specializing in not only the transaction of your software, but also the ability to do everything in the services side, from contract programming, training, support, and even post-processor edits. Bogdan, I see you out there. Welcome, welcome. I see a lot more of you guys out there as well as we kick off yet again another support session. You guys are welcome to ask questions at any time. I have a couple of things a few people have came up with. Cosmin being one of them. He sent me something about an hour ago. Super excited to jump on. Keep thinker, sound is clear, right? It doesn't matter what week it is. I somehow messed something up, as you guys may have saw on Free Support Friday last week, as well as Workflow Wednesday. So we're going to kick this off as normal. As you guys know, I always like to start with a buy me a beer type situation. The green screen seems to be working a little bit better this week. But as you guys know, you can support my channel, obviously, like, subscribes. You could also buy me a beer especially. I've also set it up now for those of you that are not in the United States or North America. I think you could buy a super chat for about the same price as a beer. I'm also happy to drink those for you guys as well. So let's get this going. Get my first drink in here. I've been craving that for the last hour. It's been one of those days. And I'm going to jump in and show you guys what Cosmin has sent me and how we're going to go about working on it. So let's get Fusion pulled up here and let's get his part opened up. Now, what I like about this is, one, he reached out to me an hour ago. I really haven't got a lot of time to look at this. However, he did something that I think nobody else has done yet. He actually sent me something about working on a woodworking lathe. So in his world of doing things, it's going to be a little different. And I do have his ticket pulled up here, but he was messaging me. He's running a GRBL controller, Adreno, nonetheless. And with that, he's actually using work offsets, which I think is super interesting since he doesn't have the ability to do tool offsets as well. And there is going to be something else I'm going to show you guys. So if you guys didn't know, this is kind of neat. So he's running the same kind of tool constantly across his part for all of his tool paths. And with that, he's now actually set up with setup 1, which is work offset 5. He's going in with, another work offset for 6. And he's done his setup that way. So he's not doing tool changes. He's doing work offsets, right? Super neat way to go about it, like I said. But his problem is let me pull up his ticket here real quick. Guys, if you ever have any questions, you can use the actual support email down below. But he's trying to make a sushi board with a holder for a small center dish. As you can see, right here is his lovely sushi bowl with his center dish. I am a big fan of sushi, by the way. And that being said, his question is around the first two setups. The block of wood is attached with screws and a chuck. And I'm going to show you guys this, because in the world of lathe turning, if you didn't know, he's got some questions about a dovetail or a chuck that's holding on to some material in space. Now, I've covered this in a few of my videos, how to approach this, but what is happening is he's adding a 0.27 inch spacer. Thank you for using the inch system. And that is simply removed when flipping the part. Now, what's happening when he actually goes into the cam side of things is the dovetail recess that's used to grab the part, and where was it here? He had something else. So the first operation is I'm cutting air and would have been the spacer, right? We're going to go ahead and take a look at this. So again, as you're seeing, we're starting to work on the back side of his part. And again, he's done the outer part of it, but as soon as he jumps into this next setup, so again, I just want to show you guys, he's already done the front side of this part, right? He's now getting into the working on the opposite side where that dovetail hold on would be. And I should probably pull up my chat now to make sure you guys aren't saying too much here. But as you're seeing, he went to go create a tool path and he got this error called invalid stock boundary. Now we see this quite a bit and I know why it is, but I want to show you guys, I'm going to give you what I'm going to say is the $560 answer to a lot of problems inside of Fusion. And I say that because that's what we charge for support over here. But if I go up to the top and I actually recreate his tool path from scratch, again, making sure we're still using the same tool from what he has here. So let's go ahead and cancel that real quick. I need to go down and activate the proper tool path or the proper setup. We're going to do roughing and I'm going to hit OK. And what you're going to notice at the very, very least, I actually got a good tool path with X trimming, of course. Now, when we look at his tool path, is the reason why he is getting that problem is he's not getting a path at all. And that's why I like to create a brand new path from scratch. And then I would go in and I would do what's called a compare and edit, right? So why is it that I'm getting something different than what he's getting? So as you can see here, Fusion's going to show you anytime you have something different. Now, again, we have a difference in our back offset. We also have a difference in our cycle and a few other things here. So again, our front offset also, it looks to be the same. Obviously, we can keep going through here, allowing grooving. Yes, this all looks good. But let's go ahead and change some things around, right? So one, we have outside profiling versus inside profiling. We also have, again, I like to start from the left to right, right? So let's just take a glance at what he has. His geometry in this case, he's working from stock front to stock front minus 0.650. Now, as you can see, because he's using a roughing toolpath, there is no model within this Z boundary to contain that toolpath, right? So this is where I would start by saying his dilemma is going to come up because he's wanting to do his vertical passes, which means he's kind of doing a facing operation outside to inside. So if he wanted to face off that little lug that is sitting here, and we're going to model up that lug here, but if he wanted to actually just face it off, he should have went turning face. Now, what that would allow him to do is to accomplish what he's trying to do when it comes to facing off this part. Again, he's going to work based off our model front. We actually want to go stock front. And then if he needed more than that stock front, obviously he could add more in there. And then his passes tab is where he can actually calculate multiple step overs, right? So as you guys can see here is we can create that toolpath to go in and face off of our part. Now I'm going to move this up to the top just to make sure we order this the proper way. And as you guys can see, we're now facing off the front of this part, but it looks like we're not actually facing to where we need to be. And the reason for that is because yours truly went in here and made a couple of changes. One of which was we actually want to machine to our model front from our stock front. So let's go ahead and get that switched back. Now you can see we're making those facing passes to take off that lug as he was saying, right? Cosmin, is this already looking better for you? Go ahead and let me know in chat. Now, if he knew the size of that lug he was working with, again, this is the importance of having something modeled. He could also change his facing if he really needed to, is he could change the radii of the facing as well. So again, he has an outermost, which is stock OD. Maybe that outermost is going to be much smaller in diameter. And as you can see, we can make some changes to this. Now, we are rapiding from a clearance. Again, we like to make small changes, but you can see where my blue lines are only cutting down here in the center area. Now, this is where I'm going to change gears real quick and show you kind of a trick why you would want to model your stock in this case. So if I jump back to the design side of Fusion, now he does have a lovely body already drawn up for this part. He also has this very lovely sketch that he used for his revolve profile. Now I'm going to edit that sketch. And the reason why I'm going to edit that sketch is now I could sketch in whatever I wanted for a stock, right? So if anybody knows me, I love to use rectangles. They work quite well here. We're going to go ahead and actually undo that real quick because we hit the wrong plane. One more time. Again, there's our first rectangle. And then let's just say our dovetail is going to reside somewhere in this area, right? Now I'm going to move this back, use a couple of constraints like horizontal vertical so I can align it to my origin. I also want this rectangle to, of course, start on center. And you guys could dimension this out as much as you want and get it tighter and closer, right? Now, the idea is I need to create a second body. And that second body is going to be based off the fact that I want to spin a stock profile, right? Oh, let's go ahead and pick our axis here at center. And then we can add in our additional profiles using control. If you guys didn't know, you could hold control. And then I would like this to be a new body, right? So as you're seeing here, I am going to create representation of what he's going to create based on what he's done so far, right? So again, we have two bodies here. One is now our stock, one is our finished part. And with that, we could jump back to manufacture. As you're going to see here is when you're starting to do these different machining things, right? If I was in this setup, going to use that stock body, right, from solid. Now, I would recommend, of course, you're going to start with the traditional approach of making that backside hub to hold on to. Then you're going to do the front side. Then you're going to end up back here on the back side. But what I'm going to show you is because that stock is now selected, all of our tool paths are actually going to recognize that at the end. So again, as you have that freedom, if we go and create brand new tool paths, or if I regenerate some of my other tool paths, of course, we can use that to your advantage. So again, what he had happen here is he started to adjust too many things. And because he was using a roughing tool path without a body, he could never recognize what was happening, right? So again, we could actually set this all to model back. Again, we could set that to 0. And outside, I believe, was one of the other ones. So we want to switch to inside. And we should now get a tool path, but we're still getting errors. This is why I always tell you guys, like, it's so much easier to go in and actually use a roughing strategy to create what you need or create a brand new tool path once you start editing too much stuff, right? So again, as if we drag and drop, we could say yes. Obviously, I need to make a few changes here as well, and that's because we're starting not from model. Again, Fusion's trying to think that you've already faced this off. So I may want to start in this case from stock front and then work all the way to model back. Again, I know this is a good tool path because yours truly created it, of course. And now you can see, of course, we have all the fine things like I can adjust out from here. I would like to use things like rest machining, and you'll see why this rest machining is valuable. We won't be machining all of that extra stuff, but it looks like in his case, rest machining is actually causing a lot of his problems as well. So again, we could go in, we could try a different, instead of previous operation, stock setup. And as you can see, now that stock setup is actually trimming his tool path to follow. Again, we made that lug based on our stock. So again, we could modify this more. He wants to do vertical passes. He went outside to inside. If we allow both radial and axial grooving, now you'll see we're starting to work down into that concave shape of the part. And we're starting to do a facing and roughing all in one. Again, because certain tool paths in Fusion are model aware, in this case, face is aware of where the front of the part is. Now, the other tool paths are all looking for a profile to machine too. That was where all of his errors come from. So I see Cosmin out there. Looks like we got you all taken care of. Obviously, this one took a little longer than expected. We're about 15 minutes into this. I do want to open it up to each and anyone else. Anybody has any questions, you can put those questions in chat at any time. I'm here to help in any way I can. You could also send in a ticket based on our actual support email address down below. It'll auto-create a ticket, and I will see that in real time. In the meantime, while some of you guys bring up questions or problems you may have had this week, I'm going to snag another drink here. And I'm kind of curious, with all of you out there, how's you guys this week? How's everything going? I got a big trip planned. I got to drive from here all the way down to Texas and back to Chicago over the next 3 weeks. You guys haven't seen my post about that yet. How's everybody else this week been? Crazy? Not crazy? Again, if you guys have questions at any time, feel free to throw them in chat. We're always happy to help any way I can. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and throw a few more toolpaths at this. As you can see, I just went in and I did a derived toolpath, create that profile back across the part for my finishing. Because Fusion is wise enough to know the relief on this tool, it does know how close it can get, especially inside this part. Another couple of cool things is you may not want to back drag that tool necessarily. So you could always go in and we could adjust other things inside that tool path. For example, where is it here? I always feel like I forget where it's at. No dragging, there it is. Now it'll actually come off the part, change, go back down, and make sure that you're not back dragging and you're always forward feeding it. Christelm, I'll see you out there. And so instead of buying me a beer from the UK based on that link, what you can actually do is we have super chats and everything set up now inside of the YouTube videos. I believe you can actually purchase beers that way. And I promise you, best bang for the buck. I will buy as many beers as possible with any contribution that you give. With that, any other questions, guys? I see a lot of people coming and going in chat. Awesome. ARE, I see you out there. Cool. So you want to know about how to do a 0-point system, and with a 0-point system, how you could actually set up to do probing. No problem. Yeah, 100% Cosmin. I see what you're saying. It is wood. It is very forgiving. So let's talk about a 0-point system. I like that question a lot. I'm trying to think what I would have. You know what? I think I'm going to go for, oh, where is it? I don't think it's Milling Monday. It might be a Fusion Friday thing. Yep. Always go for the dummy part, right? So this is a good part because it does have the ability to set up probing. And the idea would be is with the 0-point system, you would have a palette or you would have a known point on your part, right? So the question is how can you use a 0-point system and probing inside of Fusion 360? Well, the great thing is if I was using a 0-point system, I would probably have my WCS located on a specific point on that jig plate, especially if you're, like I said, using pallets. There's some point of reference that can be the same on everything. Now, Fusion would need to match that, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to set my origin based on a selected point. And in this case, the bottom center of this actual platter is what I'm using. I have made videos on this, guys, about using a joint origin to define that location, right? So first and foremost, in the world of DWO or TCP, tilted work plane, your machines, or if you don't have it, we can get away with quite a lot of things. So again, we have our origin set. Now I'm going to go in and I am going to do an inspection and I'm going to do probe WCS. The very first thing I always have to do is I have to give Fusion a probe. Now that we have that probe, we can determine what kind of probing do we want to do. In the case of this part, as you guys can see, I'm actually going to pick the stock model here because I modeled stock. I know it doesn't make sense. We get it. But now I can set it based on Z or maybe X, Y, whatever that's going to refer to at the end of the day. So as you can see, it really is as easy as this right here. And what's happening is when we go in to probe this block, we are actually shifting our work offset. So I say that because you may not want to shift that work offset, right? So we may want to use 2 work offsets in this situation, right? We want a consistent, well-known position in the machine, and then we want a floating position. So how that works is you have the ability to do what's called override driving WCS, right? So what I want to point out for you guys is you can call up a specific work offset to come in and probe with, right? And that work offset could be that bottom center of that fixture or that pallet, right? Now, the WCS to be updated right now is the WCS from my setup. So if it was me and I'm using a machine that, for example, has a 4 or 5 axis, I probably set 59 as that location, right? I put it in a work offset I know never gets messed with. But as the question was asked is, how do I go about this for a one-off part? Well, in this case, I am going to call 59. I'm going to probe and find my stock. And then where that stock is in reference to 54, 54 will be updated. Now, what does that machine look like on your machine controller? Well, I don't have a machine controller to show you guys, but in theory, initially your 54 and 59 would be a direct copy of the two. And then upon creating this WCS probing, you would see the shift in 54. And the reason why you would see that shift in 54 is because our setup is 54 and 59 would never move. So I like to use something like this with the overdriving WCS. If I had to deal with a bore or something, and that bore is kind of moving around my part a little bit, I can go in and find that bore individually each time and use a specific work offset to find it, while updating a different work offset for machining. Hopefully that makes sense, ARE. You can go ahead and let me know in chat if it does or if it doesn't, by all means. Usually, I think there used to be a really good explanation in here. There it is. Yeah. So what you're seeing is basically as it's explained here, right? So example 1 at the top, 55 is the call out for where it should be in a perfect world. We all know nothing is perfect, right? And then as you can see, each time it's gone in and probed, it may be walking around, and you can see that 54 now floating around. Now down below, if you would use a traditional way that doesn't require a driving WCS, your 54 is constantly shifting. So if you're really trying to hold a tight tolerance part, in case of one of my customers that reached out, they wanted to deck off the hat and then pick up that center, but they want that center to always kind of stay there. So again, I wish there was a way I could move down and show you guys this on, can I print screen this real quick? I can, look at this. Technology at its finest, right guys? Let's go ahead and balloon this up. So what could happen is your distance between these points from, say, let's say you probe this one and for some reason you end up over here for your next one. This could be bigger than your plus minus of whatever that is on your part, which would cause an error. However, in this world, we find that location, we machine that location, and then we reference back to 0. So then the next one is out here, we machine it there. Again, that distance can be changed right there. From Norway. He's all the way out in Norway. It's funny nonetheless. But yeah, so what you're seeing is all you're doing, right? All you're doing is in my setup, this is the work offset for making this part, right? This is the work offset to make this specific part. My overdrive, when I turn it on, let's go back to that toolpath. All I'm doing when I say override driving WCS, remember driving, right? What do you want to call to probe from? And then it will go back and update whatever your setup is, right? So again, usually the way I do it is you just copy one over to the other and then you let the one float from there. In the meantime, anybody else got any other questions? I could go ahead and post this out for you also. In this case, we'll just go ahead and use the next gen post. Sometimes seeing the G code tends to help people out as well, right? So again, you can see it called G59, right? Even though my setup is 54, it goes through and does its probing routine, as you can see here, and it probes all of that stuff. And then it should be updating 54, which it's been a minute since I've had to look at this code, as you guys can imagine. So it's actually S1 is the output. So S1 is 54 in this case. And we can test that to see if yours truly is lying to you guys or not. Let's go ahead and switch from 54 to 55. And then we can repost that code while we wait for some more questions to come in as always. Again, now you're going to see we're working with S2. Why do machine manufacturers do this? I don't know. Why can't it just say G54 or G55? It's always got to be some variable that you got to track down. But again, we called that 59. We went to a location to probe. We updated basically in X. We updated in Y. And then we overwrote whatever that original work offset is. So if we were to throw some tool paths at this real fast, go ahead and face it. And then we're going to actually do our probing routine. You'll see it all kind of checks out the same, right? So again, we have our facing from 55. We then go in and probe from 59. And then from there, we're updating 55 still when we find that actual location. Cool. Any other questions outside of that, guys? One thing that somebody did ask me earlier this week is the fact that even though our actual WCS is down here at the part with probing, we are doing all of the math when we probe our part, right? So you don't have to, and I've seen this where people think like, oh, well, since I'm probing top center of my stock, my specific location needs to be top center of the stock. That's not the case. Again, when we posted that code, if I bring back up Visual Studio Code, you're going to notice when we go in and probe, it already knows how high it is in Z, how far off it is in X and Y, shifted from your WCS, and it's updating accordingly. Again, kind of a neat thing that you guys can see here. Any other questions outside of that? We go ahead and scrub Discord. We have a Discord channel. If you guys didn't know, you're welcome to join us on Discord and ask questions there. We have the support board if you want to send in files and things of that nature for us to take a look at. And let's go ahead and resolve Cosman's question. Cosman, I'm glad to get you all fixed up there. Well, I didn't see anybody talk about how their Fridays are. ARE, I hope that kind of clears it up a little bit. What other fun stuff can we look at? Can you make a solid from your setup stock? So currently you can't just simply go in and at the setup level, I could have done a fixed size cylinder, right? Or a fixed size square. And I could have modeled my stock that way. But in the case of how this part in particular is set up and ran, it uses a parameter vise that actually controls the stock and the vise, again, making it as real to the machine as possible. And with that, I could actually go into my parameters area, and this is how I control my stock on this part, right? So let's go ahead and get this cleaned up a little bit so you guys can see it a little better. But as you're going to see here, we have what's called stock H, which is stock height. So if this was to bump up to 6, maybe my part is now 12 inches long because the guy, whoever ordered it, is, of course, an a-hole, so to say. But as you can see, I can update that information as needed and adjust my stock any way that I could. So again, I do things a little different when we start talking about 4 and 5 axis. I avoid using those default stock settings. And as you saw here on the sushi dish, you may also need to model a stock very quickly. Now, there is a way as you're machining, you could always export your stock. Again, I've seen a lot of older workflows that have been changed over the years because as you can see, now that I modeled the stock for this particular part, if I did a brand new setup, I would shift that setup over and that next actual setup would contain from preceding and continuous rest machining. Of course, we would flip our Z-axis here. We want our Z back the other way. And I'm going to just use that original stock box to make this quick for you guys. And then our model would still be that lower. And as you can see, we can go ahead and change everything around. I know this machine sim's getting in the way. It drives me mad the way this one was built. This is an old one. So we're going to get rid of the machine here. But as you'll see here, we now have that ability to go in and create that stock and move it over to the next thing, right? So as you're seeing me do, I'm just grabbing a facing procedure, flipped it over. Of course, absolutely butchered this model, but that's the way I tend to see it all being set up. Lone Wolf, I see you out there. You want to see manual inspections? Yeah, we could talk about manual inspections. So Fusion has a lot of great features, and I don't know how many of you guys come from a bigger shop. I came from a little bit bigger of a shop where maybe you're programming for somebody else on the floor, or you just want to do things like in-process inspections. You can actually go into the inspection area, and what is really neat about this is we can create what's called a manual inspect. So for those of you out there like myself that really enjoy precision items like such, let's say, for example, on this takedown hole, I really want to make sure that it always comes out to a precise size, right? So this could be front takedown. And with that being said, I could set my tolerance, whatever your guys' tolerance is. Maybe it needs to be +4 -0. Want to add any comments or anything? Or if you wanted to record this position, just making it very easy on whoever's got to actually inspect it, right? It's squared up a little nicer here. And we're going to capture that picture too. I'm going to add another one now. We're going to go ahead and go to the back one. Again, we could set that point in space. We could place it wherever we want. Capture, rear. And I think you guys kind of get the point. You can do a lot with this, right? And I did a really good video on it where like maybe you want to do instead of a diameter, center to center. Again, you guys have a lot of things you can do inside of Fusion when it comes to defining different holes, different lengths, sizes. So now that you've done that, now you've gone and ran your part and you want to see if it checks out, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that manual inspect and I'm going to right click. I'm going to do record manual inspections. Now, what you're seeing is Fusion has automatically orientated me around to go in and type in my dimension. We went plus 4 minus 0, if I remember. So let's say this comes out to 256, right? So what you're seeing in real time is what it measured. I went ahead and typed it over here. Could have typed it on the right as well. And what that has done is now told you you're deviated 5 and you're out by 1, right? So had that came in at, let's say, 49, because you know it's never going to be an exact number, I'm now within tolerance, right? And if I would have went undersized, say it comes out to 250, it now also shows you that you are below, right? So we could go ahead and hit next. We could do our next hole. Let's say that's 255. And then next again. And then we have our distance between centers. And again, we could type in whatever that is going to be. So as you can see, I now have my inspection data using manual inspect against this part. And you could, of course, record this information. So this could be your first article. This could be your last. This could be your quality control, whatever you're going to label that is. But every time you go back and record those manual inspections, what you're going to see is it's going to come out and it's going to place them so that you have an ongoing actual record of this information. So again, if your customer, this is something you could do that's a little above and beyond that could set you apart differently. Because now that we have one that's good, right? We had a bad one. Now we have a good one. I could actually go in and view these actual results if I wanted to. You could also create an actual report. Again, we can go in and we could create this report. And what this report allows you to do is, again, see that information, show that point cloud to your customer, and all of that. So I think we missed a checkbox. Oh, there it goes. Opening up in Chrome, of course. Let's go ahead and bring that back over. And give it a second to load. And as you guys see, there's my inspection report with my data points and things of that nature. Now, I will tell you guys, it's not a GD&T report, right? I wish Autodesk would give us more of those features, of course, but right now it's very simple for a lot of you. Again, not a CMM report, right? You know, you can't like probe your part on the machine and call that a CMM report. But we can actually put that data in, control that data for the next time we run it, and things of that nature. So Lone Wolf, I hope that answers your question. I see more and more of you guys coming in and going out. If you guys have questions at any time, feel free to ask them. I'm here to help you guys in any way I can. Usually about 20 minutes into this, I tend to see a Facebook post gets approved, and then all of a sudden it's an inflush, a bunch more people. Oh, looks like they approved the message earlier today. Any other questions? I'm opening this up to you. I'm here to help you guys in any way I can, of course. We just reviewed manual inspections for Lone Wolf. Anybody have any crazy problems throughout the weeks or issues? I saw one that was really interesting. I might have to try to recreate it. Be a little tricky on my end. I did get a text message. Let me make sure real quick that nobody that needs anything already. Somebody more about next week on our road trip down to Texas from North Dakota. So one of the things that I actually saw earlier, let me go ahead and pull up another file here. Where is it here? Looking for, well, geodesic might work. We're going to have to do some scrutiny here. How can you view CAM operations in Fusion Teams? Yeah, we can take a look at that question real quick. So if you want to see operations inside of Fusion, but you want to view them in Fusion Teams, for some of you that don't know, is if we were to go to, I just closed this out, so I think we're going to go ahead and view details on web here. We're going to save. And we are going to view the details on the web. So give me a sec. This will take a few minutes to load up for you guys. And now that we have that loaded up, again, it's going to take a few seconds because it's bringing through the data. Sometimes it takes a little longer than a few seconds. Yours truly is over here streaming live, so it can take some time. We could always come back to this. But what we can do once we get that viewer is we actually have the ability to toggle on and toggle off seeing those toolpaths. Now, I don't recommend using the Fusion Team Viewer. As you're seeing, the delay here is a little crazy. I would tell most people that if you're really looking to see the toolpath, I did a video on Wednesday about setup sheets, but also the ability to go in and buy a seat for somebody on the shop floor for a couple $100 so that they could do their things like, edit tool numbers or change some speeds and feeds. The cool thing is again, with the way Fusion works, if I delete this here, we made a change. When I hit save, I can always add those notes in, right? So you have version descriptions, removed facing on second op, whatever that employee did, they have that control inside the software, right? I'm going to take a peek at it one more time. If not, it's still loading. So maybe we can hit refresh and speed it up. Now it's probably angry because I just saved it again. But it does look like we're steps 2 of 3. I'm going to move this over on my other screen and we'll come back to it while we take a look at this mold. And let's get into manufacture. So the problem I saw is somebody had a machine where they were exceeding the number of end numbers and they were having some problems with that. So let's go ahead and post-process here. Of course, now that I'm going to post-process, the other has come back. All right, bring this back over. So what you're seeing here, this is the Fusion Team Viewer. If you guys didn't know, you could see what you're working on in real time. But if you actually go to the CAM area, you can go through and look at your setup, and then your setup will show you all your tool paths here, right? So the bad news is, though, is you have the stock still turned on, and there's really not a good way to go through and define turning on the stock, turning it off. If I remember, it's been a minute, like I said. Let's go ahead and close this out. And where is my stock? There it is. You can turn it off. Look at that. So we turned our stock off now. As you can see, we could see our toolpath in the viewer. And then what we also have here is here's your toolpaths individually if you wanted to turn them on and off to be able to view them. So again, although the team viewer works all right, you can't make any changes here. But one neat thing about this is if this is something that you guys are working towards, as you can see, you could actually pair this with setup sheets and have them both here easily accessible from the web, right? Ogden, I hope that answers your question. A little messy to get in here and be able to view it, but it works decent, right? So again, as we have our inspection results are also here stored online. Again, you guys can document this all and put it on the Fusion Cloud as you're seeing me jump around my file, right? Let's get back. Let's see if we can exceed. In the case of that customer, we're going to actually, let's remove the machine so it doesn't drive me mad. Go. So you can view each one individually, right? So again, as if I go back into that part, as you can see, I can expand out and then I have my setups, of course. So there I've just turned on the setup and then I need to go through and of course change. Went down here to the bottom to the model browser. Now that the model browser is out, here's my setup. Here's that face and then that probe. And we could toggle those on and off individually. If I also wanted to add cam setup 2, I could jump over to cam setup 2 as well, right? Hopefully that kind of answers some of your questions. Let's go ahead and get back to Fusion now. So I'm going to go ahead and regenerate this all now that we don't have that in there. We will probably have a few issues because we do have some multi-axis stuff. Let's remove that multi-axis real quick and make sure everything looks to be about 3-axis while it regenerates. Give it a few more seconds. Come on. Doing quite a bit here for rust machining. It's actually doing corner toolpath, which is another really great toolpath if you guys didn't know. There we go. So it's actually gone out and recognized all the fillets, or the corners, I should say, that are smaller than my previous used tool. So if we post this out, what we're going to do is we are going to go to the pre-NGC post. And let's see here. Where is it? Go to the filter. Usually a little easier. Haas, milling, and pre-NGC, right? There's my post. Copying it over to the lovely file I won't get to use. And with that, We have our configurations. We also have the ability to change our format, and we'll come back to this format here in a minute. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this out, and we're going to see if by default, yep, requires a machine configuration for 5-axis simultaneous. So yours truly over here has 5-axis toolpaths in this part. So let's go ahead and go back. Let's give it a machine, I guess. And then we are going to have to fake this thing out. We have let's put it on a GM2. Why not, right? The gantry mill from Haas, 5-axis. In case you guys didn't know. Big old machine. A part that is completely in the wrong area. So let's get this back on the table. There we go. I like the position of that. And we can work with that. Let's go ahead and post this again. This time we're going to swap that post out, pre-NGC. And of course we get failed, rewind, always something, right? If you ever want to see how to change the rewind, we can go in and edit our machine. We're going to go to multi-axis, and we're going to allow retract and reconfigure. And with that, we should be able to, again, go back and post out. The fun of this stuff, guys. You guys put me on the spot live, and I got to do all this extra stuff. Boom. Good G-code. So what we're looking to do is to see, do we exceed? We did not exceed line 9995 as that customer. But the problem is he basically ran out of digits, right? So this is a big thing in Fusion's world is one too many places. Again, he went way past the limit and his machine controller would get to that last N number and stop. So what I'm going to do is first and foremost, the easiest way to fix this in some cases is to go through and actually set your format. Let's go ahead and go back to the right post, of course. Is instead of going up in increments of 5, we could change that to increments of 1, right? So by going up in increments of 1, what you're going to see is that number, instead of being like 40,000, should be much closer and much smaller, hopefully. Get down to the bottom here. So as you're seeing, we're now only in the 30s, right? So again, we're only going up by 1 each time. I think actually we were probably over that limit before and it restarted the count. But that would be one quick way to fix that. Now, another way we could go about fixing that is we could actually edit the post processor, right? So again, I'm going to go ahead and get that pre-NGC post out. I could go into that post. I could try to figure out where all that information is coming from. So what I would say is Control F. And then if we type in N, so there's a whole lot of N's in here. So maybe we use increment. So as you can see, sequence number increment, right? So again, we could actually search. Again, Control F again will actually put that into our search window. We could go down, and if I remember correctly, there's a block. Can't remember it off the top of my head. 9999. And there it is. Maximum sequence number is what you would be looking for. Now, you can, of course, add another 9 here to increase it. And from that, you have that ability to go up higher. Now, you could also plug in what's called undefined. And undefined would take that number and it would make it infinite, right? So there would be no limit to what's going to happen. That's another way to fix this. But in the case of this customer, they weren't doing a big mold cavity, as you kind of saw me program. What they were actually doing is they were running a bunch of parts on like a jig plate. So like a whole pallet of parts, so to say. And this is where I brought up the idea is instead of using actual in Fusion's ability to machine this and N number limits, why not do something like subroutines for all of those operations and patterns that you have? So again, is you can come in and say all operations and patterns. And then from that, what you could also do is use files for subroutines. Now, it's not going to work on this part, but if I was to go back to another part, and in the case of this part, let's say we have it flipped over. We're going to go ahead and say we want to do multiple of these, number of instances, 20 of them, increasing by 1. And as you're going to see, other than that lovely error, of course, let's go ahead and change our Z-axis. Make this look a little prettier for all of you. As you're seeing, we're now machining from the side here. And if we were to hit this with a, not 2D, let's go 3D real quick. I know, 3D adaptive clearing with a 2-inch mill. I get it. Blah, 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 blah. What we're looking for is a toolpath, right, guys? So now when we go out and we post this all out, again, using that same concept that I want to use all operations and patterns if you're using patterns. And then from that, if I actually do use files, what's going to happen is upon posting is this is going to create a lot of files. And I say it's going to create a lot of files because what you're seeing right now is the minimum information this is wanting with an M98. So this M98 is jumping out to another program right now. But if you look at this file over here on the right, this is all this file is, right? We did what, 20 offsets. So we're getting all the way down to P14. And every time we're jumping out to the same file 90,000, right? So P90,000. So if we actually go in and want to open that file up, I'm going to go into my folder. We have our NC programs here. We should see now program 90,000. Now 90,000 could be a massive program again. The idea is I'm not outputting all of this code each and every time for each one of those 20 setups. I'm actually calling this up temporarily, then jumping back with a shift and then coming back here again. So this is something to keep in mind that will actually really reduce the amount your program would be and how much you're doing inside your program. Because one of the questions that they actually had is I pointed out they could put an end number only on tool changes, but because of the pattern or the multiple work offsets, that doesn't work to start in the middle of the program, right? So in this case, if I knew I was on, part in P1, I could actually come down to this location and start from strictly just this piece versus starting all over from the top or from the beginning of that tool running, right? Like this tool path is going to be hypothetically 11 hours. Hope not 11 hours. That's some bad speeds and feeds. Who programmed this? But 11 hours times 20 parts, that's a long time of air cutting to get nowhere, right? Ogden, I see another question come through. One more question about Fusion Teams. When I select one operation, the model disappears. Is there a way to show it too? So let's pull it back up and take a look. So in my case, I would assume if you go into your design, you'll actually have to turn on model browser, right? And then with that, you do have the ability to turn on and turn off in that window as well. Not only your tool paths, but also your actual parts, right? So again, as if I turn my stock off, my part is missing. Well, in my case, my part is probably down below here. And for some reason, that is wrong. So where is it here? Dummy part, of course. We want to turn our dummy part on because that is the part that we were machining, right? And again, is if we bring out that cam, we want to see our cam. So we're going to go ahead and hit setup one. Hopefully Autodesk watches these videos. I actually do know they watch these videos because they have been corrected a few times, but what are you going to do? But now if we open up the model section again, you can see I now have that set up, right? So again, as I can turn off, again, a little ugly. Say we just get the jigs and fixtures out of the way, and then I can turn on, turn off my tool paths. Of course, view it a couple of different ways if need be, right? Hopefully that answers your question again. Anybody else have any questions? We're at our peak high view so far. We got 19 people in here all at the same time. On top of that, I see a whopping 69 views overall. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat at any time. I did see a message come through on LinkedIn. Awesome. Nope, that was somebody else for something else, but cool. Any questions? Any questions at all? You guys can ask them in Discord, ask them here in this chat. You can also ask them online. Ogden, I agree with you completely. It is a little confusing, but no offense to anybody out there. I get it. Some people have the ability to pay for an extra license. I used to run a machine in my garage and then have my office upstairs. I would have 2 separate licenses just so I don't have to log in and log out. But it would be the same concept that it's almost easier to have another license in place for somebody to be able to view this, right? Any other questions outside of that? We're always here for you guys. We want to make this as easy as possible. Any questions you have, I always tell people there's no such thing as a dumb question, because if you have that question, somebody else probably has that question. And by next week, I'll probably get that question 3 times. So feel free to ask it at any time. Maybe it's time for the break, the midway break. Should we take the midway break? What are we thinking? I don't see a lot of questions coming in, so either you guys are changing out parts or just skating the day away. How many of you out there have convinced your company to allow you to come watch this versus do real work? You got an attendance sheet? Go ahead and play around with this part a little bit more while we wait. Go back to what it should be. Okay? Oh, awesome. Greetings from the Netherlands. I appreciate it. Somebody just bought me several beers for that. We got our first super chat today. I think that's my second super chat, maybe third super chat overall. I appreciate it very, very much. So as you can see, we have a part here. Jig and fixture has all been designed up. Again, do you guys remember the old days? I remember this. This was probably one of the, when you would try to machine something like this, but you would want to avoid your vise. Used to have to make like the windows, right? So you could come in and you could say like, I want to machine this, but I don't want to machine this area and all of this fun stuff. What happened to Fusion? You know, you guys don't have to do this anymore. That's why I'm going to show you this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim out this lower section now. So again, is if you were machining a part like this, you used to have to, when you would go in and do something like adaptive clearing, right? You would actually go in and you would say, I want to go ahead and do machining here, but I want to do a selected stock boundary. Or you would leave it as a silhouette from your stock, and then you would do a selected machining boundary, right? And then you could say tool inside that boundary. I'm going to go ahead and switch tools out for this. Let's go ahead and go back to my lovely shop crib, grab your guys' favorite end mill. And now what'll happen is because we've forced this to avoid certain things, the idea is that we wanted to avoid our vise, right? So we don't want to get too close to our vise. We don't want to smash into it, things like that when we machine this. Again, what I do need, though, on this specific part, I get to turn that vise on and add it in as a fixture. Let's go back in my setup. You want to include, in this case, somebody designed this fixture wrong where we only want certain things. Nope. I think we got another stock box later. Pop up very briefly. Maybe I'm crazy. It's been a long week. All right, cool. So now that we've given that a fixture to work with, we'll regenerate that. But the idea is with now fixture avoidance and everything, we're automatically going to keep that tool away and avoid hitting it. Is there a way to fix the simulate comparison when using a modeled stock? I would have to, I need a little more information than that, Deep Thinker. Again, we're getting yelled at here. Let's see why we're getting yelled at. So we need to go ahead and go remaining stock. Nope. A coil cutout on a shaft. Yeah, we could look at doing something like that. So let's go ahead and see what we have. Rest machining cannot verify the stock is transferred. Oh, because we didn't update our other tool. First, go ahead and do that. This, and we should get that fixed. Again, we're going to give this a few minutes because, again, the idea that we're now using avoidance inside of the software and keeping our tool away from that jig. I'm pretty sure yours truly has something selected wrong in the setup. Let's go ahead and look at that fixture. Yep. It's like I thought. It brought through the stock. We don't want the stock. We want these couple of bodies, and then technically our riser would help. And let's go ahead and regenerate. So you want to model a coil cutout on a shaft. One coil is right-handed, the other is left-hand. Both start at the same point. Manufacture using a ball end mill. As you guys are seeing, we're coming in, we're machining. Again, because we have jig and fixture avoidance, our tool is staying away from our jig and our fixture so that we don't have any collisions. In this case, it's actually not. We do need to go in and make sure that that is all set up correctly. Our actual avoidance is set to 0 here from our fixture. Oh, nope, it's 200. That's correct. Remaining stock. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove that boundary and see if it gives us a little different detail. But if I had to model a coil on a shaft, there's a couple of things I would use to do so. So again, I would tell people that there's a difference between modeling something, of course, and machining something. So first and foremost, if I had a cylinder, and let's just go ahead and make our cylinder, take these easy numbers here, and then let's just say 6. Okay. Now, if I wanted to create a coil, again, what we're going to do is we're going to start that coil down here at the bottom, making whatever that diameter is. And as you can see, whatever your coil is going to be at the end of the day, you can set that based on how you model it, right? Now, one cool thing is you could actually, of course, reverse direction of this as well. So if I start with the first one here, and then I go back and I'm going to create another coil. Again, same face, same diameter. And now again, we'll drag it up at 6 inches. And then this time we're going to reverse it. Again, cutting it back the other way, right? But as you can see, we now have 2 coils that go up our part, both starting from the same point, basically, right? So now to machine something like this, the question always is are you going to machine this based on center line? Like, is your ball end mill the same as this actually wrapped path? If so, you may actually want to model this a little different. Now, what would be beneficial is if you could figure out a way to use an edge for that toolpath. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drag back my toolpath briefly. As you can see, I now have a very lovely edge to be able to use for programming a toolpath. So if I didn't have these 2 little pieces on the end, just highlighting and hitting delete, I now have that straight helical cylinder, right? I could use that to my advantage when programming. And then I could create technically a second cylinder if I wanted. If I go ahead to do some magic here of a copy and paste, again, this is the fun of how your design tree changes everything you do. So I'm going to roll back my history, copy and paste, right? We have now 2 cylinders here. If I roll forward far enough, what you're going to notice is that one still has both of them on it. So again, we go to that coil. I'm actually going to change what part is being cut. What we're going to do is we're going to uncheck body 1 and we're going to check body 2 here. And we're going to turn off body 1 because we want to remove these 2 corners, right? So what I have done is created 2 separate bodies that are going to now spin and revolve themselves upwards, right? So you have a left spin and a right spin, if that makes sense. So again, I can use each body individually to create this toolpath. So let's jump over to the manufacturer side of things. We're going to create our setup, of course. Pick our Z. Z would be based on a up direction. X would be more than likely running down the center of your cylinder. And then in this case, we're going to just go ahead and place on center at the end of our, right? Go ahead and swap our stock out just to make this a little prettier. Cylinder, select my axis, everything rounded up by 0. So it's almost as if it's already to. Okay? So now this is where in certain toolpaths, again, 2D contour, for example, you have what's called a wrapped toolpath, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap a toolpath around a cylinder. I'm going to pick my contour. So this is the important part, right? I need to have a contour for my toolpath to follow. And now I couldn't do an extension here, say 0.5. What it's going to do is extend both ends. You could extend one end separate from the other. But the idea is we're going to use that actual contour for our toolpath. Let's go in where we find out yours truly probably put the wrong size tool in there altogether. And now you can see I'm following, right? I'm following that contour with cutter comp. So again, I'm going to jump back to design here because I think I made a 1/2 inch diameter. Okay, we got lucky here, right? So if I wanted to cut that on center and I kind of only wanted to do it with a couple of passes, all I need to do from here is 1, we don't need lead in and lead outs. So we could turn that stuff off. And then I could use stock to leave if I wanted to lower my tool, or based on my heights, where a selected contour minus, in this case, if it's a 1/2 inch tool, it's a 2.5 radius, or you could actually type in tool underscore diameter, divide by 2. That would also give you that dimension, but we need that to be a negative. So we're going to divide it by a -2. What you're going to see is now it will lower that actual line to wrap around our part, right? So as you guys can see, we need to extend, of course, our lead in, but our lead out looks okay. Again, we're going to go back into our toolpath, geometry. Let's go ahead and start 1.5 out, end at 0.5. And as you can see, we're now starting basically off of our part. Might want to extend it a little bit more, but I think you guys are seeing this, right? So now that I've done one, what I could do is copy that entire setup if I wanted, paste it, of course, or in this case, I need to duplicate, swap my models around. Again, we're going to go up to our model. As you're going to see here, we're going to grab this other body now. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and swap my toolpath chain. So again, we just need to change from one to the other. Now, as you can see, I'm machining back that other way, right? Again, guys, we can adjust our lead in and lead outs. Don't hold me accountable on that. But it's still the same concept that you could machine one way. Now you could machine back the other way. And I'm going to go ahead and hit F8 here, getting rid of my stock. And then I think we could just turn off our body. It's going to be weird to see, but you can see that double helix as it wraps down our part, of course. Not the best of views. But if we turn on stock, we should be able to see that, as you can see. And again, we might even be able to get away to make this a little bit prettier. Go ahead and say from preceding setup. And it will not verify the stock transfers. So I don't think we're going to actually... Oh, nope, I think we are. We might get lucky here, guys. Go, and boom. There is your double helix down the part using 2 separate models. So I hope that answers your question, Deep Thinker. I see you sent in a part. Let's go ahead and jump over, and I'm assuming you sent it to my email. You did. Awesome. I get all red on top. Not correct in op2. Okay. Go ahead and get back over here. You go to the good old-fashioned Free Support Friday. We're in 2025. This is how I mentally make notes on what day, what year it is anymore. So we're going to go ahead and grab that. Yep, intro to milling, and get that uploaded. Anybody else have any questions? Feel free to throw them in chat at any time. I'm here to help you guys in any way I can. You can see we just kind of generically did a double helix and cheated the system. Again, something to keep in mind, I may have selected the wrong. We don't have enough extension here to make it perfect, but creating that coil to creating our tool pass and using the edges on that model are extremely beneficial. Intro to 2D machining. Okay, so I got everything in here, and is there a way to fix the simulation comparison when using a modeled stock? So you were doing a part here. Now, what it looks like is your stock is from preceding, okay. And we just got to run through this real quick to mentally see what you got. You put a dovetail on the back, beautiful. Now machined everything on the front. Now I assume you're at that point where you're going to machine your dovetail off the back, right? What, Deep Thinker, which one were you having a problem with? Again, you have a modeled stock, fixed size cylinder. Oh, okay, I think I know what you're... Okay, so here's your model, right? So that's what you're machining in your first setup. Then your second setup, you do not have your model selected as your stock, right? So when I go into op1, my stock is actually not a fixed size cylinder. It's going to be from solid, and that solid will be your modeled stock, right? So if I go into your bodies here, here's your dovetail. I'm now going to define that as your stock. What that is going to do is regenerate everything, and what you'll see is all these tool paths are now reflecting that you still have that little shoulder down there for your dovetail, right? As you machine through this. And then in your next setup, your op2 setup, you have from preceding, beautiful. And what you're seeing is that silhouette of your stock has now come through in real time, right? So again, as if we regenerate our toolpaths here, as you can see, all that stock has disappeared. And if I was to simulate this, go ahead and give that a sec. You can see, don't want operation. We're just going to do comparison. There is your stock with your dovetail and all your holes from everything you've done before. So in your case, you need to treat it a little different mentally, right? Like you're machining in the first setup that physical body, and that body is what you're using in a later setup to define your stock. So that was the only problem I see here. Everything else looks more than adequate. Everything checks out pretty good. There you go. I think that would fix your problem overall. Let me know in the chat, Deep Thinker, if that helps. We're up to 21 concurrent viewers. You guys, 21 of you guys are out there not saying anything in chat. So either you're absolutely speechless that I have no idea what I'm doing, or you're just trying to skate the day away, which I don't blame you. That hourly employee life is the way to go. You guys really want to make no money in life? Start your own business like I did. It's been nothing but an adventure. I think that's a record 21. 21 on the day. I think the most we've ever had was 24 at the same time. But let's see if we could scare some people off, of course. You know, this is where I get to beg you guys for money. Actually, that's not true. If you guys want to support us in any way possible, hit like, subscribe to our channel, of course. Come out, join our live streams. We're doing 2 a week, which I will warn you guys, I think I'm going to have to skip Workflow Wednesday next week. I am going to be on site training someone. However, I am hoping to do Free Support Friday live from the van when I'm parked on the road. So you guys can support us in a lot of ways. You can buy Fusion through us, currently 30% off. You can buy support and training through us, which is also 30% off. And you can even go as small as a super chat or buying yours truly beers, because that's the agreement with my wife right now is I'm not allowed to drink unless you guys are buying the beers. Again, exception, I always buy an energy drink each week so I can celebrate with you guys. Let's get back to this. Yeah, I scared 2 people off. We're back. Ogden, we're back to 19. Anybody else have any questions whatsoever? Any way, shape, or form? Super happy. Oh, we're back to 20. See, they came back. They left just for that. They're like, I don't want to hear the sales pitch. Harm, I got to thank you again. Harm out there bought, is that euros? 6 euros worth of beers. Somebody want to give me the direct translation on how many Bush Lights that is going to be? That's a 6-pack, right? Not anymore. 6-packs are like $11 for 6 beers. Have I ever tried? Yes. So I've machine scanned objects, and I actually, when I'm on the road, I'm going to get you guys some really good content because I have a lot of customers that have been reaching out about, I'm going to start a new segment. It's called Scan to Cam, right? So the idea is taking a 3D scan, and then usually you don't want to work with that STL file or that mesh, but how you guys can go through and let me see. I don't actually have a good part here, but a lot of it from a high level is going to be the ability to go in with your mesh, repair your mesh, fix your mesh, clean it up. Now, I will say, depending on what you're scanning, a lot of scanning softwares have a really powerful mesh tool to start with reduction of facets and stuff. However, once we get it to that point, it's usually easier to go in and convert it back. And then once you get it back to a solid model, way easier to machine it, of course. Now, I did do a video that you can actually speed up toolpaths in certain situations. Now, a lot of the new toolpaths don't allow for it. But if you were to convert your model to a mesh, you can machine against a mesh, of course. Yeah, 100% Bogdan, you're pointing it out completely. So I actually had a few, I think somebody mentioned that last Friday, right? Somebody brought up the idea that like, hey, I am machining this part. No, it was you, wasn't it? You're machining that part that you're going to build up a weld on it. Let me go back here. Support January 3rd. Where's that part? Here it is. Yeah, it was you, Bogdan. But yeah, you're right. So in Bogdan's case, he kind of pointed out something really, really valuable about that is like, this would be a perfect use case for him because we talked about this last week where, as you guys will see, I have 2 models floating around here, and I am going to go ahead and we are going to change our opacity here to see this. But as you can see, there's this like landing here. So in the great world of mold making, occasionally they get smashed, they get worn down. He wanted to machine down these red areas so that they could rebuild up welds on all of them. And then he's going to remachine it back to its original. So in his case, yes, being able to 3D scan something like this and create that model from, you know, the original model, the post machine model, the welded model, all of that stuff, right? Don't we all wish we had a 3D scanner, right? I'm going to put that on the Christmas list. Anybody wants to be top tier donator, buy me a 3D scanner. They're only like 10, 12,000, right? I think a lot of it comes down to is looking into the resolution of the scanner and the application, right? It looks like Harm has one, Bogdan. You guys might have to talk a little more offline about it. Anybody have any other questions outside of that? Adjusting some of my camera settings here real quick. There we go. Did I miss any other questions? Let me get scrolled up here. So it's going to be a few weeks, Harm, before I get that content all fully put together. I will say, though, a lot of it's coming from several of my aftermarket performance car type folks that they are hand porting a cylinder or not a cylinder or a head, hand porting a head, and then they want to duplicate that porting across the other 3 or 6 if you're a diesel guy or a straight 6 kind of fanatic like myself. But they're doing it in a little different way, but works quite well. I think this is the halfway point. I'm going to take a 5-minute break, go grab some water, possibly a snack. Got to keep working on this dad bod as much as possible. If you guys have any questions at any time, feel free to throw them in the chat. All right, we are back. Let's see. Do we get some questions in here? Scanning motor parts and duplicating them and machining them. Yep. Motorcycle, car, doesn't matter. I don't know why. I like the whole theme of this road trip I'm about to go on, I think is car parts and 3D scans, I swear. Cool. Anybody else out there? We broke 100 viewers. We broke 100 viewers before the break, and that is awesome. We've had 100 views overall. I think that might... No, that's not a record yet, is it? I think we've hit like 140 as our peak. Maybe I should pull up my channel. That usually tattletales everything right there. Let's see here. On our live stream. I guess it doesn't show you the live count initially. I'd have to look at it different. It does show me the amount of views over time. I can officially say we've broke 1,850 subscribers, so I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Any questions? Any questions at all? Now you guys got me curious. How much was that Creality Raptor? Might have to order one. That's not terrible. I remember the days when you used to be able to use like an Xbox 3D Connect or whatever. Connect. Awesome. Anybody have any questions? I'm leaving this, guys, open to you. Any questions at all? The only thing I would tell you guys is I would make my choice on a 3D scanner on two things. One, what is the resolution that you really need? Of course, like I have customers that scan like car fenders to make body kits. The resolution doesn't need to be anywhere near like precision machining, right? On the other side of things is how easy is the software to use to manipulate that mesh, right? There's a reason certain companies get all that money for their mesh software, right? Harm knows what it's like using the 3D Connect for 3D scanning. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Any other questions outside of that, guys? Opening everything up to you. Surprised we haven't got too many post questions yet. Everybody looking forward to the weekend? Who's working on Saturday? That's probably a good question, right? Any of you guys got to work Saturdays? Get that double time? Bogdan, it is completely possible to compare 3D scans. To say the least, like, Faro has been doing that forever, where you could actually take your original model versus the scan and overlay them to see the difference. Again, I would tell you in your case, if you're doing things like this mold that's smashed and all that, you would need to, of course, scan before and after. And then once you convert it back to models in Fusion, 100% be able to go in and machine. And in the world of Fusion, yeah, once they are converted, again, it's going to be a little tricky because like the tessellation of each one could be dramatically different. I got one for you guys. You guys may not know this. I made a video on this. Bogdan, I think you're the one that may have reached out to me about creating the cylinder stock around this part, right? Or putting a part on center of a cylinder for machining. Because if you guys didn't know, you need to model stock in certain situations, and this is a good example. So if we were to go in and create a setup on this part, I think I showed this. So my stock, if I do a fixed size cylinder and I say select axis, right? I don't actually have an axis on this part to pick to create that revolved cylinder shape. Now, if I pick this down here, this doesn't actually center my part, right? So this is something where modeling your stock is going to be your absolute best friend, but there's a secret to it, right? So if I jump back to design on something like this, and I go, and I am actually going to take this part here and I'm going to duplicate it. So we're going to go ahead and copy and paste. And this is going to be Phil's stock, right? Because this is my change to this whole operation. And under modify, I'm going to go down to simplify. Before I do that, though, just to be precautionary, let's go ahead and turn off the original model. So let's go to simplify. And what I want to do is I want to replace this part with a primitive. So if I pick this part, I can actually go in and say do a cylinder. And as you're seeing in real time, it's creating a cylinder based on the dimensions that I want, right? So again, as if this was 1 inch, actually it's going to be 2-inch diameter stock. Notice how it's going to replace my part based on exactly that. So it's literally going to take whatever your shape is and do a cylinder directly on center here. So now that I have that, again, it created a component for me now, but I have my original part in the background versus that cylinder that I just created in real time. So again, kind of a neat thing as you guys are seeing here. I see that Thomas has another question about going back and forth. So your cylinder goes all the way down and then it stops and it comes all the way back, right? But yeah, so as you guys can see, you can use that simplify primitive to create your stock body. Let's go ahead and just change our opacity here. So that now that cylinder is perfectly around the shape of this part in this case. Again, a quick way to cheat and get that set up. So on the cylinders, let's go ahead and go back to manufacture. We're actually going to go back to design. And let's go ahead and get stuff turned on. So his question is he actually has a closed loop that spirals down and then reverts back the other direction. So I need to fix my model here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove those couple of delete faces. I'm also going to remove when we went ahead and create that second coil. Boom. And now we can create. What I'm going to do in this case is we're going to extend our actual shape, right? So as you can see, our height, we're going to do things a little different. So I'm going to start with a new file. I think this is just going to be easier for you guys to see. Go ahead and open a brand new file. This time I'm going to create a cylinder with a circle. And the reason for that is because I want to do a two-sided extrude, right? Again, is if I wanted that coil to go a certain length, in this case, I'm going to still use 6 inches, but I am going to set the overall length of this cylinder to 8 inches, and I'm going to do so by doing 7 inches above, 1 inch below, right? And the reason why I wanted to do this, because I need to model that coil. When I create that coil, I can place it on that plane starting 1 inch from the end, right? So again, we could go ahead and create whatever that diameter is. We know it's 2 inches to center line. I want it 6 inches long. And again, that's going to be center line to center line. So you guys know, so we're actually going to be the center of our coil is what we're measuring from. Again, I'm going to repeat exactly what we just did. Same location. Go ahead and drag that out, put our 2 inches in, drag it up our 6 inches, of course, and then we're going to reverse our coil. As you can see, we now went one way and now we went back the other, creating, again, that profile in the middle so that you can loop down and loop back. Now, this is going to be a little tricky because we don't have an actual chain that is linked from one end to the other, right? Now, depending on how he wanted to machine this, he could machine each one of these, so to say, diamond shapes here individually and then jump from one to the other. Another thing that can be done is he could actually create, when he does these coils, right? Instead of doing a cut, we could do a new body. And with that new body, we could actually machine, again, using those lines on the actual coil body. And in this case, as you can see, as we have that edge on the top, we would take that tool diameter and sink it down. So again, as if I go to that other coil, same thing, new body. I now have my 3 bodies, right? We have our cylinder plus our 2 coils. I could do a combine between those 2 coils if I wanted. And if I really needed representation here on the actual cylinder, I would do another combine. Now my target is what I want to cut. My tool is what I want to use to cut. I want to do a cut. And then what I want to do is I want to keep the tool, right? But as you can see, if I turn off the actual coil, I now have my pattern, but I can steal this actual edge and use that as my chain for my tool path, right? So again, we're going to switch from design to manufacture, create our setup. The axis, of course, needs to go up. Let's just scroll out a little bit so we can grab that base. X is around cylinder. We're going to do a selected point again. So again, we're rotating around center. My body is strictly just this cylinder here. We did a cylinder also. I don't think I can say cylinder any more times. Oh, nope, we got to pick our cylinder as the axis. Round up by 0. So there's our part to machine. Now we're going to use that body that we have to create our tool path, right? So again, our 2D contour, we're going to wrap it around, guess what? Waiting for it, chat. Cylinder. And then we are going to pick now our contour selection. So as you can see, by default, it wants to pick that entire loop. So I'm going to hold Alt. What that allows me to do is pick that first chain. And now I can wrap that chain around manually all the way down to the end of my part. As you're seeing me do, I'm just rotating my part. Again, continuing to select that chain as I get to that other end. Again, we are going to go a selected contour minus, in this case, 0.5. And of course, we want our tool. 1/2-inch ball end mill. Hopefully, I still made a 1/2-inch coil, right? Now, keep in mind, we're using the center line this time, right? So we need to be aware of what we are picking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into that tool path, and we're going to turn off cutter comp. So this will actually move my tool onto center. We do still have a little bit of lead in, lead out. And if I move the coil out of the way, I think you guys are starting to see that tool path all the way down and back, right? Now, I do have to point this out. So some of you are probably questioning, well, can you continue that to come back the other way? You can to an extent, but just know in Fusion's world, you can't do a full 360 from one end to the other, right? So as you're seeing is I can't actually select that next chain coming back the other way. It doesn't want to double back on itself. So again, it would be still very valuable in this case that we're not going to use lead in and lead out. You may want to use a ramp instead to be able to ramp down as you spiral around the part to create that tool path. And again, I'm getting an error here, and that error is that you can't do a ramp based on that zigzag, right? So we may be stuck with doing strictly just a plunge right now. And if your groove that you are cutting is technically smaller than what you're doing here, this is where we would start to look at doing something like a rotary pocket or doing our rotary contour to finish out that groove, right? So again, at this point, I could just take that first go around, copy paste, or duplicate, Control D, change my chain from one way to the other chain, again, unselecting one. I wonder now that I think about it, though, is can we add both chains in at the same time, right? That's always a curiosity of mine when we do stuff like this, is do I have the ability to put both chains in this part together, right? Again, we're going to go ahead and loop this guy up and around, back and forth, back and forth. And let's see what we get for a tool path. Let's turn on our tool path. So there's our F7 to turn on our tool path. As you can see, it's now starting in the beginning and going from one end to the other. Of course, it's retracting at some point. Again, not a perfect example because I assume there's some probably fillets out here at the end to blend these corners in. But again, this is just a little different approach to something as such where I'm using a body or an edge on a body that is just a dummy part to throw away to create that profile. Cool. Any other questions outside of that? Go ahead and open this up to you guys at any time. Meantime, I have to shoot back an email real quick to somebody. If you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in chat. Go. Any of you guys down in the Lincoln, Nebraska area want me to stop in next week? Let me know. I'm going to be basically in Lincoln and Omaha all week long. Man, I tell you, it seems like this stuff goes by so fast. I think, what do we got? We still got another 20 minutes left. Guys, have any other questions outside of this? Any other wild stuff you guys want to try to subject me to work with? Lend the inside one. I'm no modeling expert, you guys have ever wondered. Going once, going twice. Any questions? Any questions whatsoever? Anything in particular you guys want to see? Anything you're curious about? You guys want to see one that probably will help you guys? So if you notice on this machine sim for this particular part is when I go in and I try to do stuff inside of Fusion, notice how I can toggle on and toggle off show machine. This will make your life much better at the end of the day. So every time you click on that setup, your machine no longer gets in your way because you've turned off the machine and machine visibility. Now, when you go in and simulate this, though, we don't want to do a normal simulate. We want to do a simulate with machine. I'm thinking. Simulate with machine. Now, your machine has come back, but one thing to keep in mind is you have what's called a base as well. So, depending on how your machine sim was set up, and in the case of this machine in particular, you probably don't want to see all this extra stuff, right? So, again, you can change these machine sim files and be able to set them up so that you only see the things that you want to see when it comes to manufacturing, right? And how you can do so is we are not going to be able to, and I'm going to say this up front, you cannot go out and hit edit here at the machine in the file you're working on. You'll see what'll happen is if I go to model, I cannot replace or edit because it's currently in use inside this file. Now I can go up to the top of the machine library. I can find that machine I'm using, and I could go ahead again, as you're seeing, because I'm in my recents folder, I can't do anything with that. Now we could go out to wherever that actually sits in Fusion. Let me see if I can find it here. So we have, there it is in my Haas folder. Now I can edit it at the top level in my cloud, right? So again, we could go edit machine builder. And what you're looking to change, just so you guys know, is what's happening is anything that is the static or what's called a base is considered the item that can be toggled on and toggled off when you're in that machine sim setting, right? So if you wanted to, based on how that machine is built here, as we can see, this entire thing is all of the x-axis, right? Well, in this case, whoever built this has put all of these additional pieces in here. And again, it's nothing against whoever did this. It's just that's the way the machine was built, right? So if I actually change this out, right, I'm going to unselect everything. And I only want, in this case, let's just only grab that welded gantry, right? Well, I can't grab strictly just that gantry because it's a body and it keeps wanting to default back to the entire component. So this is the rabbit hole that you get into when you guys are trying to do some of this stuff, because you now need to go back to design, of course. We need to go to x-axis. We need to convert this guy into a component. Now that it's a component, I can then select that component. If I can find where it put that component, of course. Let's go ahead and undo that real quick. We might have to cancel this and start from the top. Yep, let's go ahead and cancel, and we're going to do that all over again because the timeline was not turned on, right? So again, we're back in Machine Builder. We go to Design, capture our design history, go to that x-axis, find the body we want. We're going to go ahead and I just want to see yeah, that's the sheet metal. So what we want is we want to go in and create component. Now that we've created that component, we could select just that item, right? So it's a little bit of a mess, but if we go back into Machine Builder, we edit the setup machine model, We can now define what X we want, but what you're noticing is everything has disappeared now, right? So you're kind of like up a creek without a paddle, which makes this more and more fun. So another way you could possibly achieve this is if I edit in Machine Builder, and if I go in and I actually turn off the components I don't want to see, right? So again, kind of a cheating way to do this at the end of the day. But if I know what I want to see and what I don't want to see, you can get away with by toggling them on and off. And sometimes that will actually bring that information through as well, right? What you're seeing me do is I'm getting rid of like all this additional stuff that doesn't make sense to be in there. And now I've cleaned up that file quite a bit. So if I hit Finish Machine Builder, sometimes they fix it, sometimes they don't. It works some days. So what we can do is we can now go back into Fusion, bring through our latest version, and let's see if it actually took, right? Again, we're going to simulate with machine here. And now that I've hit all those bodies, as you guys are seeing, if I turn on the base, it's only that one item in my way if I'm really trying to see this without everything else, right? Like, it looks cool the first couple of times you do this to see the sheet metal and everything. Now it doesn't even matter. And so you guys know we could even turn off that actual frame up there as well. You don't need it on because we've already set how to do it. So, Harm, great question. How do you rotate your part? I have selected my machine and I can't change the position, but do not know how to rotate it. So everything is defined by your XY selection, right? So if I actually look at my part position here, notice how this elongated pocket runs the length of my table, right? So that elongated pocket is actually my x-axis. So if I change my x-axis to point a different direction, I'm going to go ahead and use this plane here. We're going to go ahead and say the x-axis goes off this plane. Again, my origin has moved. The key element here is my x now runs lateral. Notice how my part has now clocked itself 90 degrees to the table. Now, that's how I can rotate the part technically. So I want my X, Y, Z set on my part, of course, the correct way. Now, if your machine's X and Y is wrong, we would have to go through kind of that whole process all over again of putting that machine and fixing the machine sim and how the machine sim operates, right? So you would have to come all the way back, Machine Builder, edit machine. And again, what you would do is you would redefine. So if I wanted to flip X and flip Y, I would have to unselect these two and then reselect them in your tree, right? In this case, I'm not going to go through all that. What I'm actually going to do is we're going to turn everything on here, but I am going to turn off the entire component for X, again, creating that update, right? So you would just redefine what is your X and what is your Y, if that makes sense. Other questions? We're 2 views away from 140. I think 140 is the record of 140 views throughout one of my live streams, right? That's why we're going to chalk it up to that. Can we hit 140? How would you rotate it so it would stand on its side? So same concept applies, right? So if I wanted to take this part in particular, go ahead and regenerate this real quick. There's my toolpath. Again, the way I define my X, Y, Z in my setup defines everything, right? So again, is if I wanted to stand this part up like this in my machine, I would need to define my Z axis. I'm going to use this edge right here. Maybe. Let's use this edge. Oh, no, we can't use that edge. So we're going to have to go back, use planes here. Let's go ahead and unselect. Let's get our origin turned on. So I want Z axis now up, right? If we look at our part position on our table, notice how my part is now standing up on my table. Also notice that that giant weldment is no longer in my way, making my life much easier. Again, pro tip for you guys to be able to set your stuff up the way you want. And then from there, when you simulate, you would see everything is now repositioned and it should now simulate out with it standing up. I can already see that my toolpath is coming in the right way. I'm going to turn off that origin real quick. And as you can see, we now have our part and I'm machining on the end of it. So again, by defining which direction your Z, X, and Y all point, that changes how it actually sits in your machine sim. Another couple of things I think people fail to realize is you guys probably all see me making a bunch of moves here constantly, right? So if I wanted to look at this part in a specific direction all the time, is you do have different features. For example, named views. If I right click and I say new named view, and I could say this is 3D part, right? You can use these named views for whatever you want inside of Fusion. And what it will do is it will automatically jump to those positions. Now, in this case, when I jump from one back to the other, notice how it keeps me at the same distance. So if I was to zoom in here and then right click back on 3D part, I can update that named view at any time. Again, making it very easy for you guys to jump around and look at different sides of your part when you're actually working on it. You can name these just about anything you want, put them in any orientation that you want, so forth and so on. Questions. Anybody got any questions? I'm going to check my emails and stuff, make sure that nobody has emailed in while we are here. No more support tickets, no messages on Discord. I feel like we're missing one or two of our regulars that usually come out and hang out. It's only the middle of the month. You guys don't have anything to do. They're not trying to, you guys aren't trying to make the month, right? You're going to hang out here and watch me mess around in Fusion. Going once, going twice. I see you guys out there. Anybody have any questions at all? Did I start my outro? That usually gets me another question. Always does. Regenerate the rest of these tool paths. Oh, I'm going to fix our XYZ here. Still not seeing any questions. That's good. Either you guys got all your questions answered or you guys are just speechless at how badly I am at this. Is there an order of operations I normally do when machining? There is a little bit, for sure. We can take a look at that here. So commonly, it depends on the part I'm machining as to what my order of operations are. Again, you sent that lovely part here over, and I'm not going to feel bad about this, but if I go ahead and remove all of this stuff in here, very commonly what I find myself doing is I actually just use a workflow of kind of left to right, top to bottom, right? So of course I start in my setup area. We say new setup, my XYZ direction, create my stock. From there, I tend to go straight into roughing. Now, if I'm working with a really large part, I may choose more of a pocket clearing strategy. And again, I don't like to face off, in this case, this part only has this little bit of flat. So I personally wouldn't waste my time using a facing operation unless, again, if I was using a big part, I'm going to reuse that tool. On the backside, I might want to face because I have a much larger flat area. But I tend to jump straight to 3D, and I'm a big fan of just adaptive clearing. Again, this really depends on your part size, but we go for that flat end mill. From there, we could go ahead and let it do its thing. I do have to say, as you become more and more familiar with Fusion, of course, the way you set up your tools makes this much easier, as you guys see. For example, on this tool only has one speed and feed. It's not using step over or step down, which can make a big difference to the way you program as well. So again, if you have those tools properly defined, if I was to swap out this tool here real quick and show you, go back here. I thought I had one somewhere else in here. I do. So let's say I use this 1/2 inch flat end mill. Notice how it's got a bunch of speeds and feeds tied to it. This helps a ton for me to quickly grab something like roughing, right? And then what you'll see in here is it also has set up tool step over and step down. Let's see if you can see it in this menu. So use step over true. How much is my step over? Use step down. How much is my step over, right? So when I hit select and OK this time, what you're going to notice is it's automatically converted everything over for me. So I tend to use the strategy of more like prepping my stuff right, so it automatically does everything. So as you can see here, I could, again, this is a relatively simple part. Depending on how I was trying to approach it, I could come in, again, based on surface finishes here, guys. Don't judge me too hard. I might actually use 2D contour here and then do something like machine all the way down to this flat for that pass, right? Again, getting those islands and everything taken care of. And then a second 2D contour around the bottom. Again, I would like to go a little bit past, right? So as you're seeing is it's kind of a rough into finish. I tend to stay with my bigger tools as long as I can in most people's cases. This part, there's nothing wrong with making those changes along the way. It just really depends. Am I going to finish with this tool later? Then I could put it away and go smaller. If I'm going to finish with it now, as you're seeing, it might be easier to keep that tool, right? Milan, I see you out there. Easy one. How to enable sub-spindle part grab transfer in a 828D post. How to enable. Is it not in the post by default? Let's find out. Post library. And that is turning. That's Siemens, right? Oh, hold on there. We're going to go back in there. Benjamin, I appreciate it. I love the thanks. Again, we're going to go, what is that? 8.2. There it is. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and copy this into my lovely folder for us to delete later, as you guys know. Now I'm going to edit this post. And the question was about the sub spindle. Let's go ahead and find sub. There may not actually be any sub spindle in here by default. Let's just take a glance here. Sub programs. Let me make sure you guys aren't trolling me. Are we sure this isn't a milling post and not a lathe post? Millings and machine simulation. So you can't do anything that is a mill post. See, look, I got you. Alon's out here trying to throw me through the ringer. All right, so he's saying it is actually just the normal Siemens post. Siemens mill turn. We're gonna go ahead and copy this, and we are gonna throw that again back over in this other folder that one day I will eventually get this all out. So let's edit this. So first we're going to look for sub spindle. So we do have sub spindle, of course. It is definitely in here. But let's start with the basics, right? So we're going to go ahead and I am going to pull open a lathe part here. And let's just go turning Tuesday. The more you guys do this, if you ever end up on this side of the computer, you're going to have like a handful of parts you always have ready for questions like that. So he would like to do, let me scroll back up. We are going to do a sub spindle grab / transfer, right? So here is my sub spindle grab. And then I am actually not going to do a bar pull, and we're going to go ahead and leave the part off. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do a sub spindle grab into a sub spindle return. Make this a little bit nicer so you guys can all see what I'm doing. And we're going to post process this using none other than that post I was just griefed about. There we go. So as we can see here is we're going to just double verify a few things here. Make sure there's nothing that we need to turn on, like has sub spindle. I'm not seeing anything, and we're going to hit post. So now we're getting an error. Stock transfer is not customized for your machine. So error 2576. Let's take a look. 2576 is going to be a ways down. On 25. So right here, it looks like somebody has turned off all the customization in here, which there's probably a million reasons why this is. It looks like a lot of code. It'd be quite intimidating. But what I'm going to tell you is if we remove this little asterisk right here, what you're going to notice is it basically has now opened up and turned all of this stuff on, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to scroll down here because they have the second asterisk down here at 2688. But what needs to happen is this is also going to need additional information, right? So this is where we now can cancel out what we have here. So again, I'm going to go ahead and put my backslash and star, and then star again, backslash. So I've canceled out the error, and I've now turned on what it should be doing, right? So let's start with this. We're going to go ahead and hit save. We do have a error happening here, so we might have to do some fixing here. And I'm going to show you how you guys can kind of go about this, right? What I'm going to do is we're going to go back to Fusion, and I can repost out. And now this is the old way to do it, right? Drive ourselves mad, right? So I need to find that post, and I think I broke that post quite well where we're not going to find it, and I did. So we need to go back and do a little bit more on that post real quick. What are you getting mad about here? There's our open bracket. Usually it'll show you in red when you're really screwing something up over here on the right. And what it's telling you is there's either too many of these guys, and in this case, there's too many. I deleted it. I just deleted it. Worked real nice. We're going to save that again. We go back to Fusion, and now you're going to post out, and we're going to grab that post. Where did it go? Siemens mill turn. It looks like it disappeared from the face of the earth. Let's see if we can find this another way. Siemens mill turn, file, save as. Let's make sure this is in the right folder. There is a Siemens mill turn here. And let's go back. Sometimes you got to start from the top. So it looks like it doesn't want to show up, which would lead me to believe we broke that post way worse than I was thinking. So let's go back and undo what we've done and start again from the top. Sometimes it's a little easier just to do that. Nope. And the reason why I wanted to do this is because I wanted to show you guys very commonly what happens is you do break this stuff. Happens to all of us. Again, anybody out there that's watching me right now, I never took a course on Java or how to program this stuff. Trial and error and years of experience, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post this. Again, I'm going to get that error. That's a good thing. We got an error, right? So again, we know it's not customized, right? But this time, before I ever edit the post processor, what I am going to do is I'm going to post again. And this time, I'm actually going to use what's called the export CNC file to Visual Studio Codes. Because what this is going to do at the end of the day, we're going to just make this 1111, I guess, is it's going to create me a debug file automatically, right? So when I'm in the Siemens post now, if I go in and I have to have, and I think every week we talk about this, you have to install the post utility tool to do this. But if I go down to the custom area, so I'm going to go CNC selector, custom, raise this up for you guys, and we're going to go to the 1111. We just wrote that, right? But I can't click on it yet because I'm still in the wrong window. So let's go back and we click on 111. What you're going to notice is it's now errored out and it's given me that error, right? So if you ever want to come in and start messing around stuff in a post, anytime you make some of these changes, right? So as you guys will see here, we're going to go ahead and let's go and delete this. And then I am going to put the asterisk here, backslash, and I know I need to do /. There we go. And down here at the bottom, I'm going to remove this one causing the error, as we know. Then I can remove this one as well. And what you're noticing is when I removed the lower section of this, right? Oh, let's go forward just a couple. Is upon removing this bracket here, notice how I've caused the dilemma that the rest of my post is turned off. So by hitting that delete, and when we hit save, notice how it's now got all kinds of other problems, right? So again, is we're going to put that back. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that we have everything in the right spot. So we have our bracket here. Let's just make sure everything is closed out the right way. Because again, sometimes you need another one. So let's go ahead and throw in another one just in case. It doesn't look like we need another one in there. There we go. We removed it. Hit save. And now return not in function. So again, we can play the back and forth game of trying to figure out what it's trying to do, right? So again, as you're seeing, there's another error here. Stock transfer is not supported. We may need to remove this error from here. This is why we tell all of our customers this is why you can reach out to us using a support ticket. We're happy to spend the time to edit this stuff and go through and play this game in real time. So what we thought could be an easy thing overall, as you guys are starting to see, it takes a little bit more than some people are expecting, or certain things, true, false statements. Again, we're now all the way up to line 2038. Again, a lot of things that may need to be done to a post is not as easy as like, oh, it's a true, false statement, right? The good news is when you work with us at jitcadcam, it's not what you know, it's who you know, of course, is we are the ones that are upfront pricing. We always tell people we're going to try to do something for the lowest price possible. And by that, it may be a couple of hours of support that is all it takes for a post, or it's buying a custom post because we've put so many hours into it. But we are always upfront and true about everything we have. So I'm going to hold off on making the rest of these changes here and diving through this because I do want to open this up for the last couple of minutes to make sure nobody else has any other questions. So we did break 150. That's absolutely outstanding. I think that's a new record high. Bogdan, we're gonna call this. This is a 154 total views throughout this live stream. I appreciate all you guys. I appreciate the beers that you guys buy me. The beers that you don't buy me, I still appreciate them and I still drink them. I just put an empty cup out there and hope that one day somebody buys me another beer, right? So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. I am Fusion Phil over here at jitcadcam. It's not what you know, it's who you know. You guys all know me, obviously. For the question, Milan, about the post processor, feel free to email me using the support email down below, and I'll do my best to get to it before the weekend. Thanks, guys. Have an outstanding weekend.